Do you think you're choosing who you have relationships with? What if I told you that it's actually your unconscious that chooses for you, based on experiences from your childhood that you don't even remember anymore? Yes, there is hidden emotional programming behind the way you love, give of yourself, and suffer. And when it kicks in, the love relationship becomes a battleground between the fear of losing and the dread of getting too close. Perhaps you've already experienced this. You've felt suffocated by wanting too much, or frustrated by someone who never seems to want enough. This is not random. It's your emotional attachment style in action. And when an anxious attachment meets an avoidant, one. What starts out as infatuation can turn into a painful dance where no one emerges unscathed. But there's one thing that nobody tells you. It's possible to get out of this cycle, and without ceasing to be you. Today, you're going to understand why you experience certain repetitions in your emotional bonds, how emotional insecurity disguises itself as love, and what you can do to build a healthy emotional connection, without playing games and without fear of abandonment. And when you understand this, nothing will ever be the same again. Few people really understand how love relationships are shaped by something invisible, silent, but extremely powerful. Its name is the attachment system. From an early age, we learn how to love and how to react to love by observing who has taken care of us, whether they were present, absent, cold, available. All of this becomes emotional code within our body. And it's this code that later determines whether we get too close, too far away, or always live between fear of loss and relationship. Anxiety. It's as if your attachment style is an emotional lens that colors every bond you build. Sometimes you find yourself immersed in a toxic relationship, begging for emotional connection, without understanding why it keeps happening. Other times, you run away from real affection because you think emotional intimacy is a sign of suffocation and the truth. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to understand what's driving you. Awareness of this mechanism changes everything. Want a simple exercise to get you started? Notice how you react when someone walks away. Do you feel like chasing after them, closing yourself off, pretending you don't care? These behaviors aren't random. They're reflections of your attachment style, built up over a long period of time. And if you're starting to notice this now, maybe it's time to take a closer look at a specific type of attachment that causes a lot of silent pain. Anxious attachment turns the love relationship into a constant testing ground. A woman with this type of attachment feels as if she has to work hard all the time to deserve love. Every unanswered message becomes a cause for anxiety. Every silence is interpreted as rejection. The fear of abandonment takes over the mind and body, and even happy moments can be lived with a background of emotional insecurity, as if everything were going to fall apart at any moment. This pattern often leads to intense but deeply draining emotional bonds. The person with anxious attachment wants emotional connection all the time, but not because they are calm, but because they are on alert. They need messages, calls, affection, proof, anything to soothe the pain of not feeling enough. She doesn't want to control the other person, as many people think. They just want to feel truly loved, without fear of being left behind or forgotten. Clear example of this. She says, "Is everything okay?" when he's slow to respond, but inside she's already constructed 1,000 scenarios for pulling away. This isn't drama, it's emotional desperation. To start changing this, you need to notice the cycle: need, anguish, trying to get closer, relief, and the fear coming back. When she begins to understand this pattern, she can gradually learn to look at herself more calmly. And this is especially important when the other side of the relationship reacts coldly. Avoidant attachment is sneaky. It disguises itself as independence, as freedom, but behind it lies a deep fear, that of giving in and getting hurt. The woman who lives this style of attachment may seem cold, detached, or even indifferent, but in reality, she has learned that opening up emotionally hurts. So she builds walls where there should be bridges. And what's worse, she doesn't even realize she's doing it to protect herself. In romantic relationships, this avoidant behavior appears when intimacy increases. Do you know when everything is going well, and out of the blue, the person starts to pull away? They cancel plans, avoid in-depth conversations, get irritated by displays of affection. This isn't usually disinterest. It's internal panic. The fear of vulnerability makes emotional connection unbearable, even though deep down they want to be truly loved. For those who identify with this style of attachment, the first step is to recognize that emotional detachment isn't freedom, it's escape, a practical exercise. The next time you feel the urge to pull away for no real reason, stop and ask yourself, what exactly am I trying to avoid right now? This kind of question can start to open small cracks in that shield. And that's when the dynamic changes completely. Especially when the avoidant crosses the path of someone with an anxious attachment. There is a kind of silent magnet that unites anxious attachment and avoidant behavior. It's as if the two were at opposite ends of the same emotional rope. One pulls, the other lets go. The anxious person seeks emotional connection at any cost, while the avoidant person runs away from emotional intimacy, like someone running away from a fire. Deep down, both are afraid, one of abandonment, the other of vulnerability. And this creates a dance that may look like love, but is actually a cycle of pain. This dynamic usually starts with intensity. The anxious person is charmed by the apparent stability and emotional control of the avoidant. And the avoidant, in turn, is attracted by the anxious person's surrender and affective availability, until this surrender begins to suffocate. That's when the avoidant person moves away, and the anxious person, desperate, runs after them. This game can go on for years. These love relationships are full of ups and downs, with emotional bonds that are more like traps than ties. Breaking this cycle requires awareness and courage. The anxious woman needs to learn to regulate her anxiety in the relationship without depending on the other person's response. The avoidant, on the other hand, needs to learn that opening up is not synonymous with losing control. A good place to start? Asking yourself, in moments of conflict, am I reacting based on my fear or on the reality of what is happening now? This kind of self-observation can reveal the pattern and set the stage for something much healthier. Breaking attachment patterns doesn't mean stopping loving. It means learning to love without losing yourself. A woman living with anxious attachment or involved with someone with avoidant behavior often believes that the problem lies with her. But the truth is that this is just a reflection of an unconscious attachment style. When she begins to see this pattern, she realizes that a love relationship doesn't have to be an emotional roller coaster. It can be a space of peace. Healing begins with a daily choice, observing oneself with compassion and acting with greater awareness. For example, if she used to send 5 messages in a row when the other person was slow to respond, now she takes a deep breath, writes in her diary, and asks herself, is this my relationship anxiety, or is it really something he's doing? Small steps like this build a new emotional structure. It's not about closing yourself off. It's about strengthening yourself from the inside in order to open up safely. This is where the real transformation begins. When she stops using others as a source of validation and starts trusting her own emotional intuition. This doesn't mean isolating oneself, but cultivating emotional bonds based on truth and presence, and not on fear of abandonment. It is possible to live a love that doesn't require sacrificing one's essence. And when this new outlook becomes a habit, she doesn't lose who she is. She finds herself again. Now that you understand how anxious attachment and avoidant attachment shape your love relationship, the question remains, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to keep repeating the same patterns that hurt you? Or are you going to start building more conscious, secure, and true emotional bonds? Remember, healing doesn't happen from the outside in, but from the inside out. And it all starts with one step: awareness. What type of attachment touched you the most today? Did you see yourself in any of these dynamics? Tell us in the comments, because this exchange can help other women who are also trying to understand why their relationships seem so complicated. Shared vulnerability transforms. And if this content made sense to you, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. We're still going to talk a lot about how to transform your emotional life with clarity, depth, and courage. Because a good relationship isn't one without conflict. It's one where you can be yourself without fear.